Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Sunday Messages. I asked you all on Instagram what podcast topics you wanted me to go over, and I got some pretty good responses. And the thing that was a common thread between many of the responses that I got was contracts, manifestation, life path, that type of thing. And so one response caught my eye. It's manifesting versus contracts. Can we truly shift paths, or is there some stuff that's set in stone? So I kind of want to dissect this, and I'll give you my take on contracts, like soul contracts, spiritual contracts. Some people have the perspective that everything is contractual. I completely disagree with that. We'll talk about how manifestation dovetails with all of this and see where else the conversation takes us. So let's see, where do I want to begin with this? Let's go way back to pre-birth intentions, okay? Now, some pre-birth intentions, there are infinite possibilities. If you took soulmate recovery, that's a retro Sydney class, but that came out back in 2020. And I went through like a whole list of possible contracts. But instead of thinking about it as there's this list that's hanging out up in the clouds, and you can select a set number of contracts that you're going to experience. Don't think about it quite like that. Technically, you could have infinite contracts because possibilities are infinite as well. So it's way more nuanced than I think what we can consciously perceive or comprehend while we're in human form. This is my understanding and interpretation of contracts. So some will be specific and some will be general. Let me give you an example of a really specific contract where it's like, that is what's going to happen for you, whether you like it or not. This would be pretty much anyone born into the Kardashian family post their empire being built. Okay, so this would not necessarily apply to, let's say, Kourtney Kardashian. Kourtney Kardashian may not have originally come with a fame contract, if you will, if we want to play with the idea of a fame contract. However, North West absolutely has a fame contract because of the time and space in which she was born. Kourtney Kardashian was born before the empire was built, so her desires for fame were able to evolve over time in conjunction with the rest of her families. However, the little ones that are being born into that family now, it's like, no. They deliberately chose to incarnate in a time and space where they would be planted in fame, literally while they're in utero. Okay, so that's something where we can look at that and say, okay, that is a contract, because whether or not you like it, you are going to have the experience of fame. So there is a less choice involved in that. There's less of the manifestation aspect when it comes to that, unless we're counting pre-birth contracts, pre-birth intentions where you chose that. So it's like, yeah, is everything manifestation? Yes, I'm kind of splitting hairs on this. But when it comes to what is being consciously created at the time that they're incarnated, that's where things have more variability. Some things are really general. And I would say the majority of intentions that are set are general. It's kind of like you want to be born into a set of conditions and circumstances that are going to put you in different positions and give you exposure to different desires. Okay, so if you were born in extreme poverty, Wealth is a common desire that is born out of poverty trauma. If you're born into wealth, well, the potency on that isn't nearly as intense. And there's different stuff that can go along with being born into wealth. There's different intentions that emerge as a result. There's different desires that emerge out of being placed in that experience and choosing that path. So let's get back into, okay, is stuff predetermined? Here's what I'll say. When it comes to contracts, I think people get it in their mind that it's something that transcends their free will. Like, this is something that was chosen for me long ago, something that I signed up for many, many, many eons ago. And it can become one of these things that people perceive as not like your free will is then at odds with contracts. I want to make it very clear. If you signed up for it, it is going to translate as a desire. Here's, if we want to go even deeper, this could be a desire that was a pre-birth intention that you set, that you have to go along through your life to really discover and let life reveal to you what you truly want, even if you set the intention before you incarnated. Does that make sense? So when we're talking about a desire or something, some conclusion that you come to while you're incarnated, that is different. That's what people view as standard manifestation. When we're talking about contracts, it is a little bit more complicated in the sense that it could be that you don't actually figure out that you want something that is a contract that your life brings you to. And it might be some type of painful experience. It might just be a moment of clarity. It might be an epiphany. It might be a dark night of the soul, whatever. There's all sorts of different things that people can describe these experiences as. But the point is, you will inevitably come to the conclusion that you have this desire. At which point, is it a contract or is it a manifestation? Is it a desire? All of that gets blended together. So there would not be a situation where you would have a contract that has to be fulfilled that would not be desirable. Those are the same exact thing. I am absolutely sure that there are people who would say, no, there are all sorts of like rotten, terrible, egregious contracts that you can sign up for. And it's like, well, from the broadest possible perspective, that's not the case. When you're looking at it truly from a bird's eye view, that is never going to be the case, because where you end up as a result of those experiences is always going to be better than your experience prior. Every moment that you exist holds potential for more pleasure than the moment prior, because that's how the expansion of the universe works. So let's shift gears a little bit and start moving into this idea of following a path. I happen to believe that anything, let's say that you're destined for anything that's contractual. To me, I interpret that as you're going to get there one way or another, but life is going to inform you of where you ought to go. And that's what emotions are for. So when you're focusing, let me back up. When you are feeling into something that is not right for you, and you continue to move in that direction, the tension just gets greater and greater and greater and greater in order to steer you in the direction that you do want to go. And it's very interesting. I've thought about the idea of choice. Okay, choices like I could have gone down this path or I could have gone down that path. And if I'm being totally honest, I I don't think that that is the case when you're looking at the tension factor. Because when you continue to move in the direction of something that is not good for you, or that when it comes to your soul's perspective, knows that that isn't going to yield the kind of results that you desire, you will experience more pain as you move in that direction. Some people do that, but people who are extremely insensitive to their guidance, which is likely not going to be people listening to this podcast, but that's the type of tragic experience. When I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about my mother, who has literally created hell on earth for herself because of her lack of sensitivity and willingness to listen to where she was being guided. But for someone who's listening to this podcast, if you're already at the point where you're this deep into energetics and you're present for this conversation and you want to hear these things, you're not going to be endlessly enduring and tolerant of experiences that are not resonant with you. That's pretty much an impossibility. Because at a certain point, what will end up feeling like relief is pivoting. And then when you feel into, oh, this feels better, this feels like relief, blah, 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 you'll then be steered in that direction. A great example of this was the house that I was in, the big house that I'm sure many of you remember. The longer that I stayed at the big house, the more painful the experience became. And other areas of my life were trying to get my attention, like, hey, something is not right. And it wasn't until I came to the conclusion, or I was even presented with the question of, what if I don't re-sign the lease? And then all of a sudden it was really clear and it was really apparent. There's a caveat to this. This is not the same thing as you wanting something deeply, like in the core of your being, you want this thing, and you just have shitty beliefs that are not in alignment with it. That's different. Because it doesn't matter how many times you start over, you're not going to be able to drop the desire. You can't drop it. So at that point, you would just have to get your beliefs on board with it in order for you to feel satisfaction. I think a lot of people perceive life as there's all these forks in the road and there's all these different options, all these different choices. I really don't think so. Unless you're super, super, super insensitive, I really don't think so. And insensitive could look like numbness. It can look like being completely checked out. It can look like addiction, right? If you're super immersed in active addiction, it's going to be very difficult to tell what your guidance is telling you. It's just because you're going to be totally desensitized. You're going to be totally numb to what's going on around you. And that is one of the main reasons why people endure things to the point where the situations and circumstances just continue to get worse and worse and worse, is because they're numbed out to the sensitivity that would otherwise be helping them. So let me get back, because I can feel there's a specific question that is being asked here. This is what I'm seeing. It's, what if I'm moving in the direction of a desire, and then all of a sudden I change my mind and maybe I stop pursuing what that original thing was? Is there something that I have to fulfill? Or is there another option that then becomes available? I wouldn't see it quite like that. How I would frame it is, the desire is going to continue to evolve over time. And I'm reading like what was intended in that question. The desire will continue to evolve over time. So perhaps the point of it is just that you move in the direction of it with the understanding that you will pivot. Like, and that could mean a lot of different things. That could mean you discover something better. And it was almost like a bait and switch where your soul knew, like, come this way, come over here, come in this direction. And so you were led on this path because what would actually emerge on that path is a new desire that's even better. And so this isn't to say that a contract is going to be something that you miss, and it's not going to be something that you will necessarily even have full consciousness or awareness of. Perhaps the unfolding of what's happening is nothing more than you're being led down an experience that's really pleasurable. And then because there is a greater calling that you're feeling into, there is a pivot that occurs on the path. A personal example that I can give you is academia was really easy for me. I had no issue getting straight A's. I could do it without even showing up to class. Like, school was just really easy for me. And so initially I started down an academic path, but then I was quickly disenchanted by psychology as a field. I really discovered that it was not right for me. I had all sorts of other issues with the field in general. And had I not gone down the path of academia, I may not have come to the realization that entrepreneurship was actually right for me. So that was a discovery that was made while I was in college. So it's interesting how academia was initially what got me out of the house. Like, that was kind of my saving grace that just moved me along the path. But then what was actually being nurtured during my time in academics and college was my intuitive development. It was a lot of the skills that created like a foundation for the work that I'm doing today. It was meeting the right people. It was being surrounded by a lot of female entrepreneurs. It was learning how to get clients. Like, all of that was happening while I was in college, very, very, very early on. And so again, it's like in my mind, I had academics was what I was pursuing, but on the side, all of these other things were developing, which eventually became dominant. So it would not be correct to say, well, I'm good at this and focused on it, so I have to see it through because it's contractual. No. Sometimes things are just moving and evolving and changing, and you're being led down a path where you're just feeling into greater and greater resonance. And so see it as everything that I'm being exposed to, all of the experiences I'm having, all the people I'm meeting, all the stuff that I'm learning at this time is in service of me coming to greater discoveries that will then result in just more unfolding, more delight, more good stuff, more projects, more experiences. That's the eternal nature of expansion. Contracts will feel like completion. It'll feel like resonance. It'll feel like satisfaction. It'll feel like fulfillment. It's going to feel like desire. So even if, let's say, and that includes all of this stuff that is not wanted. So like, I could look back at so many times in my childhood, a lot of the abuse that I was exposed to, all that stuff, all the types of people, all the danger that I was put in, all of that stuff. In the end, it's like, my God, that served me. There was a lot of stuff that needed to be cleaned up, but when I'm looking at it was shaping so many more things, I can't help but look back on that experience with a deeper understanding of how it set me up for my now experience. And it is the cliche of like, well, I have no regrets because it made me who I am today. there is some truth to that, but it depends on how far away from the situation you are. When you get far away enough from something that may have been quote unquote contractual that fell into a negative category, you have to get away from it in order to really reap the benefits of it. When you're in the thick of it, then that's not how you're going to be seeing it. So to answer what I think the underlying question is instead of digging your nails into an outcome and saying, this is what I meant to do, understand that you can have all sorts of desires that emerge as a result of where you are on your path, move in the direction of them, and continue to feel that purposefulness. I actually wrote something about this the other day, as far as if you are moving in the direction of your desires, then you are fulfilling your purpose. If you're simply allowing yourself to be guided, if you're listening, then you're fulfilling your purpose. If you are keeping up with what is most relevant now, what is most active for you now, then you're fulfilling your purpose. I actually cannot stand the idea of purpose, but a lot of people talk about it, but I don't think it's that deep. In the same way, I don't actually think that contracts are separate from manifestation, in the sense that if you intended it, then that means there was a desire for it, even if it was a negative experience, because it would put you in a different position as a result of that experience. So it would give you wisdom, it would give you character traits, attributes, it would bring different people into your life. There's all sorts of things that would emerge from that would be at the core of your desire. In the same way, a whole bunch of stuff happened with the big house, but where I ended up was the beach. So it's like, thank God I'm out of that house and I'm in this one, because this is actually the highest timeline, as all of the spiritual people say. It's like, this is actually even more satisfying. This is actually way better than what I was experiencing before, because my lifestyle got an upgrade. It wasn't, I have to nest and I have to be committed to this big house because it was what I originally wanted. Your desires are going to change. And so let me pull up the message again. Is it set in stone? Yes, but it can be general. So you can have a general intention that is like a slam dunk. Yes, this is what you want. This is what you can have. So that is fair to say, but there can be flexibility within the intention that you set. So this is one of the reasons why I think people have such a hard time with this concept, is because energetics are way more fluid than what we're able to achieve with language alone. So this is also one of the problems with incarnation. When people are thinking about incarnation, they're thinking about it from a linear standpoint, like one soul, one body. How does the population continue to expand if incarnation is the thing? And that really has to do with, you're not thinking about energy as being fluid and expansive. So contracts are one of those topics that's very similar, where people are thinking in terms of, well, it's like a human agreement. It's like as if you're dealing with a legal contract, and it's not quite. There's way more evolution involved. There's an understanding of the process here on Earth. There's an understanding of how you're going to evolve over time, and all of these other things are considered when you are setting intentions. So yes, it's set in stone, but you won't know that. And if something really isn't right for you, you're just going to experience more and more tension, or more and more of a repellent or more and more pain until you release something and actually move in the direction of what you want. I had a podcast episode a while back called Jump. I put that one out in 2021, but I was talking about this exact thing where it's, if you do not listen to your soul, you will experience more and more pain. Like it's just a tension thing. So I don't think you need to give any thought to the idea of contracts because there's nothing you can do about it anyway. It's kind of like your soul, your God, your soul, the universe has such a clear picture of what's going on, and you can trust that any of the contracts that you speculate you may have in this lifetime will result in greater fulfillment. There's nothing that has occurred that is like, okay, you've signed up for this terrible experience and it will be persistent over the course of your entire lifetime. Do I want to go deeper with that? There's a lot of people who will say, no, that's not true. I know because I can see other people who seem to be in pain or seem to have undesirable experiences, but that's only because you do not fully understand what that soul is doing or what the intention is, or there's just all sorts of caveats to that. But I want to make it clear that when it comes to contracts, there is not something in an intention that was set pre-birth that would result in persistent, everlasting, negative experience. And the reason why I'm saying that is because no one is cut off from God. So even in the most catastrophic situations that you could ever imagine, God is still available. The energy of God, the love of God is always available. So that's why there can be so much diversity on the planet, and God is still available. Whether or not everyone is able to or is consistently accessing that, that's a different conversation. Whether or not people are kind of jaded to the point where they don't buy that anymore, or they use something like a war zone as a means to justify the idea that that's not true. There's lots of different things that people say to kind of discredit the idea that God is always available. But I just wanted to make that really clear that there is availability. God is available in all circumstances, in all situations, in everything. God is available. So wrapping up, final thoughts around contracts. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to worry about it. The more important factor is your guidance, moment by moment guidance. That's what matters, because that is going to lead you into fulfilling all of the things and the stuff anyway. And even if it looks like something like changing your mind or abandoning a project or moving on to something else, if that is where your soul is guiding you, then that's it. Then that is the fulfillment of it. You don't need to overthink it. You can trust yourself. So I'm sure that there's many questions that'll probably come from this, but that is my best summary of this. Let's see what else. So the last episode that we had was about character work, and I will definitely be recording the other episodes. So we'll be talking about storytelling. I think I'm going to do that episode next. And then there's another episode that will be more about self-concept and identity and all of that good stuff. And it's just been a blast because I'm running Big Kids School right now. And so we have calls every week. And when we had our call on Thursday, everyone was raving about character work. And it just made me so happy, because this is the reason why we have a mini mastermind that is all about character work and storytelling. And I'm just super stoked for it. So if you are wanting to get into Once Upon a Time, applications are open now. Character work is just so much fun. It is so much fun. It's a game changer. Everyone is still using it. We did it weeks ago in Big Kid School, and people are still using it, still loving it, having so much fun with it. So this is going to be a good one. Another thing that I should mention, if you've been wanting to work with me, I don't think I announced this. I've closed Graced. I can't focus on launching it right now. So for the time being, it's closed. I have too much going on. And so Once Upon a Time is the way to work with me. And in my opinion, when I was looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, it feels like a steal to me. That entire program, I'm like, this is going to be so freaking good. I can't get over it. Anyway, if you want to work with me, that would be the way to do it at this moment in time, because then we're going into Apex season as of mid-August. So I'm going to be shifting gears and moving into Apex. We're going to be talking about consumption fasting, all of that good stuff. I'm going to be back on my Apex game as of then. So if you're wanting to work with me closely in an intimate setting, this would be the mastermind for you, because then we get to work on whatever it is that you want to work on. So it's going to be Once Upon a Time. Then we're moving into Apex. Then I would be surprised if I launched another mastermind at the end of the year. It's probably not going to happen. I don't like launching masterminds at the end of the year. So this is it. If you're not getting in Once Upon a Time, then it'll be Apex. And I don't know what the rest of the year is going to have in store. And then, holy smokes, it's going to be 2024. Oh my God. It's going to be 2024. Okay. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on everything that's going on. If you're wanting to work with me, those are the ways to do it. And I think I'm going to put another episode for you out on Wednesday. We'll do the storytelling episode. We're going to talk about your inner dialogue, all of that good stuff. And that's all for now. Thank you so much, everyone. I will talk to you all later. Bye.